Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and beyond and to create the life of your dreams. So today we are going to be talking about taking a positive approach to defying age, to aging, to all of the changes that come into our lives as we get older, as we're rebooting our lives in our second half. The changes as our children age, our marital status sometimes changes, our job changes, our bodies change, everything seems to change. So we're going to talk about an honest and approachable way to deal with this reality. And my guests today are Barbara-Ballinger and Margaret-Crane. They're writers and authors, and they wrote the book, Not Dead Yet, Rebooting Your Life After 50 together. Barbara, Margaret, thank you so much for saying yes to me and being on my show.
Thank you for having us.
It is my pleasure. So ladies, let's jump right in and talk about what inspired you to write this book, Not Dead Yet. And I love the title, by the way. So let's talk a little bit about why this mission and message.
Okay, I'm going to start. This is Barbara. We had written a book 4 or 5 years ago titled Suddenly Single at 50, which was we were suddenly single, a little different, not quite at 50. I got divorced or dumped, as I often say. Meg, Margaret, lost her husband to cancer after a 5-year battle. We thought we had, navigated becoming single, happy, having our children, then having our mothers, having our careers, blah, blah. And we found as we got closer to 70, whoa, there were suddenly a whole new set of challenges.
We sure did. All of a sudden, the aches and pains started. Friends were having replacement parts. We were taking more pills. We were talking about our illnesses more. We would slow down a bit. Things started getting a little more difficult. And we thought, that's not okay. We're going to enjoy the next couple decades. And there are a lot of good role models out there who are doing so. So we took that approach, a very positive approach to aging.
But we also tried to be very honest and authentic, which is the approach we had taken in the prior book. We didn't want to sugarcoat. We're not Pollyannas, but we're researchers and reporters who know how to find the experts to guide us, the friends, and told their stories. Whether, Meg can talk a lot about downsizing and moving halfway across the country.
So when you hit this next phase, what I hear you saying is it's always a new phase is on its way.
That's what we learned. We learned we're evolving. Everybody says that, oh, you're always evolving as a person if you, don't stand still. But we really found that this was a big evolution for us.
And people's personalities do evolve. We have a whole chapter. Our final chapter I think the title is Our Inner Cake Baked. Not at all. We have had huge changes in our lives based on experience. I mean, it's amazing how much more we know at this age. Trauma, upheavals, things like that.
And how did you choose to put a positive spin on these challenges as you came to this point? Because you told me that you have this blog you do together since 2015. So how did you choose, and why did you choose to do things the way you have?
To be positive, I think that's how we each are individually. I think, we may complain and moan and groan to each other more than to others, maybe sometimes to our kids, but we're able to be, both of us are resilient. And I think, we can talk about whether that came from our families or over time. And we both know that we can meet a challenge. We don't have unrealistic expectations most of the time. We do on some things.
Right. And we talk about, you can hide your age. You can have Botox and plastic surgery, and God knows we color our hair. And many of our friends have had their necks tucks and their face lifted, but that's external stuff. It's important how you feel about yourself, being healthy, eating well, taking your mental health temperature.
Well, humor is a big, humor is a big part of our friendship. We're able to make each other laugh, and we're able to see the humor in a lot of situations. I dated a lot after my divorce. I mean, crazy dating, too much dating. And I was able to look back and say, whoa, that was insane, and see the funny situations that I went through.
Humor actually has gotten us through everything. We're always laughing. I mean, and it's pee in your pants humor. We each think the other is funny. And that's just such an important tool. And what you mentioned earlier, Barbara, too, resiliency, because our lives were completely undone at one point. I mean, completely changed. And I have friends I met in a grief support group who are still stuck in their grief after 10 years. That just isn't our style. We have to figure it out. And as Barbara said, we're researchers and writers, and we talk to people and we figure things out. We're not going to stay stuck. And that's an important thing in aging. Why
yes,
stay
and
stuck?
I think also that we have 5 children among us. And, we want to live our lives for ourselves, but we also want to be a part of their lives. And I don't think they wanted mothers who were mopey, grumpy all the time.
Good point.
So I think they helped inspire us in their own ways.
We also had parents alive. When my husband died, I had 3 parents still alive. Barbara's mother just passed away a year ago. We had things to take care of. We didn't have time to indulge in our tears. I mean, we cried plenty. We cried, we laughed. It took us a while to get our sea legs.
And we were fortunate. I mean, we're both somewhat frugal, but we're not, we were fortunate. We had some resources, so we could afford to go to an exercise, a Pilates class, and get out of bed. We could afford to, make a nice meal. We could afford to do certain things. And yet at the same time, I don't consider either of us entitled. We're very hardworking women. So I think we were fortunate that we had good infrastructures to build on.
We did. But in my case, I had no idea when my husband died because he did everything. He was the CEO of the household and did all the investing. I had no idea if I were going to be on the street. I mean, I was almost neurotic about it. And I mean, to the point where I turned the heat way down. I jump in and out of the shower in 2 seconds for fear of using too much hot water. I immediately figured out something my husband never would have done is I needed a financial professional to help me get on track.
Right.
And then we found out, each of us in our own way, that we weren't going to be out on the street. We had amazing resources, but most important, we had family and friends. They really got us through, and we had each other too. Wouldn't you say so?
Yes, absolutely. We could bounce ideas off. I mean, there wasn't probably anything that happened that I wasn't, Meg was the phone, I reached. The biggest problem for me was when she moved to New York and got a new number. I didn't know it automatically because my brain is aging. Here I had to remember a new phone number. But
Well, see, I was being kind to you. I was giving you a brain teaser.
right.
Brain health. That was the purpose. It was brain health.
It was on purpose. Yes, absolutely.
So one of your chapters is about friendship. And I would love to, as you're talking about you're not dead yet, you're rebooting your life. Obviously, it sounds like friendship is a very important part of that journey. And why is that important in your eyes?
Well, because, we lost our husbands and we have our children, but we don't want to, be a burden to them. And we had aging mothers. So friends are somebody you can count on in many cases. One thing we learned, we have what we call a big friendship. It doesn't mean a best friend, but it means a really important friendship where you're honest, you share. And we learned in writing the book that there were so many different kinds of friendships. There were other big friendships or other very, very good friends. There were some good friends. There were some people that became acquaintances. Meg is meeting people in New York City who, I don't know if you call them acquaintances or pop-up friends that we learned about.
Oh, I like that. Pop-up
which
friends.
became a blog. I took a class in New York City before the pandemic, and those were sort of pop-up friends. And some of them did move out of the pop-up stage to the permanent stage. Some didn't. So we learned that's okay. And we've also seen friendships die. I don't mean literally die, because we have lost friends.
We've seen friends die, but not friends.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. Friends, there's so many different categories. And that's one of the things we learned doing our book. You have your, as Barbara said, pop-up friends, your casual friends, your Zoom friends, the friends you see in the hallway of your building, the shopkeeper friends.
I have a lot. I live in a little village. If you watch Gilmore Girls, it's my village. I equate to Stars Hollow, and lots of quirky characters.
Well, Barbara really thought that's where she was moving. She had this fantasy that she was going to meet, what's his name? Who was the star of that movie?
Luke.
Right.
Well, I don't know. No,
guy.
I dream more about Diane Keaton.
Oh, that's it.
Baby Boomer, or what was the movie she was in where she met the veterinarian?
Right.
That's who I was looking for, the veterinarian.
Right. You definitely thought that was going to happen. You were going to be Diane Keaton. Right. You were fixing up your old house and you were going to meet the handsome doctor in town or whatever.
So was that a courageous move for both of you, like living in a village and redoing a house, or moving across the country to New York? Were those part of your reinvention?
Well, I felt when I got divorced, I didn't want to be in the same place as my ex. I hate the word ex, but we'll leave it at that. But my mother and daughters were both back east. So I decided to leave the Midwest and go back east. And I decided I've never lived in a little village, a sophisticated farming village that's small.
So.
And a cousin convinced me to try it. And I didn't know anyone here, but the shopkeepers were my first friends, and they're still among my circle. They're not, a few of them have become better friends.
Well, it's cute when I visit Barbara and Ryan, where she lives. People come up, hi, Barbara. Everyone seems to know her. It's very cute.
It's not, thank you, but it's not that they know me per se. We all know it's a place
where they do know you because they call you by name.
Well, no, but I mean, it's not like other people have the experience too.
I would say that for people to know your name, you do definitely live in a smaller environment, because I have people I've seen for years at the store, and they're very friendly to me, and we ask how they're doing. But I just recently found out the checker's name because it was on one of her jackets. I had no idea what her name was. She does not know my name, but we talk, and she calls me honey, of course. Hi, honey.
My late husband used to call them Huns. Yeah.
When you don't know a name, you just kind of
Huns, because they call everyone honey. Right.
That's funny.
You have another chapter on this idea of friendships and relationships, about mending and repairing. How have you guys navigated as we do get older? And I've been pondering this, and I'm getting ready to turn 55, so I'm a bit behind you, but the relationship piece at this point in my life is a bit of a surprise how people float in and out of your life. People you thought you would be there are not there, or people that you really, really care about and have made time for stop making time for you. So, how has that shift and transition in relationships been for you guys? What kind of encouragement or tips do you have for people? Because that is another thing that's changing at this season of life, at least for me.
Well, for each of us, and I've found it very challenging and difficult. I'll be very honest. I've had a number of experiences. I like to think that everybody should be kind, that should be like a big billboard. You don't want someone in your life, do it kindly. Better not to ghost them, although I've been guilty of that. And I think you have to do what's in your heart and what's right for you, but thinking about them a bit too. I don't know, Meg, is that?
Well, I think it's important to look at your friendships. Now, you can't get everything from one friendship, which, we have really long time friendships that date back to grade school, junior high, and that's a totally different kind of friendship. Today, friendships offer this, a little of that. As we wrote in a blog, we compared different friendships to different spices. Some add a little salt, some add a little spice, whatever. The bottom line is, what do you get out of that friendship? How does that person make you feel when you're with them? Are they critical? Are they bossy? Do they never give you a compliment? Do they talk behind your back? Do they have get together with mutual friends and not include you? Is everything all about them? You want to add to that, Barbara? What else?
Yeah, I think a mutual friend of ours long ago said to me, you should be with people who make you feel good about yourself. That doesn't mean not speaking up when someone hurts your feelings or, and sometimes you have to let things go. You have to cut people slack, especially I feel now during the pandemic. We've all felt so much stress that certain things, just let it go. Is it really going to matter? And we had something where Meg said something and, and I wasn't going to say anything because it didn't matter in the scheme of our friendship.
Wait a minute. What is this?
No, it was so unimportant. The next day you said, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize.
Oh, I remember. Okay.
And I said, that's fine. Thank you. But I wouldn't have spoken up about it. And I think we each try to cut each other slack. I'd like to think I cut other people. And then I know sometimes I don't. My mother was much better at this than I was. And she had an expression, to hell with them. That was how
she did. Right.
She dealt with situations.
Well, my mother was the opposite. She had more fights with people. She was constantly losing friends because she was a raging narcissist. And if it wasn't about her or they weren't handmaidens to her, it was the hell with them. But she never used bad words.
No, and she taught us both to be inclusive. She always said, err on the side of being inclusive rather than leaving someone out. I always think about that.
No, I know you do. But my mother, as I said, she was do as I say, don't do as I do, because she was never inclusive.
So, I think we've each evolved, and that's part of, maybe it's less dramatic than rebooting.
How do you think you've evolved your personality in certain ways? How do you think you've changed?
I think I'm definitely more patient about a lot. I let things go over time. I mean, Meg was at my house recently and said, you're much better about letting me load the dishwasher.
The first time I was at your house with that dishwasher.
I know, but
get away from the dishwasher.
Yeah, well, because this is my first house all on my own, and it was my kitchen, and you have to learn to let go a little. You have to learn to let someone take over, and that's hard when being with yourself all the time. But
you're doing so well. I mean, all those people in your kitchen. No, I was impressed. You're very relaxed when people are in your space.
Now,
and you're a great hostess. Well, that one time with the dishwasher.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're bringing up a good point in this friendly conversation about, that being able to lighten up, let go, guard the flexibility. I think there's many ways that we become inflexible as we age. So we think and talk a lot about physical flexibility, don't we? You got to keep moving. It's good to stretch. But I think that there's an emotional and mental flexibility that is as difficult to maintain, or, maybe we've never been that flexible. And I feel like flexibility is what I'm hearing from you, is that kind of emotional flexibility begins to serve you if you can.
Well, and I think for Meg, I can say I always like to entertain. My mother had loved entertaining and having people over. So I was comfortable when I became single, having people over, taking them out, whatever. I knew that I knew at some point the invitations were going to stop. People were going to stop feeling sorry for me, and I would have to reach out to them. And for Meg, I think that was a bigger change, right? When you started entertaining on your own.
Well, we weren't big entertainers. We had barbecues in the backyard, but that was the extent of it. My husband didn't love having tons of people over. To get back to how we've evolved, one of the ways that I've changed a lot since my husband died is compassion. I had no idea what it was like before then to lose somebody so close. And I have a really great understanding of that now. And I've done like a 360 in that department. I'm much more caring and compassionate, and aware of how I relate to someone who has lost a loved one, because some people said some pretty strange, insensitive things to me. Going from, I know how you feel, to, do you think you'll start dating soon? This was like 2 weeks after he died. Crazy things. So
yes, and I think we're more careful also about the questions we ask people. We have a list in the book of questions.
Well, it depends. It depends. If we're doing an interview,
right.
I think the fact that we let our boundaries go by the wayside helps us really get good information out of people. In terms of friendship, yes, we've learned to set boundaries. I was never a great boundary setter with my kids until they became adults, and they said, whoa, Mom, keep it to yourself. And I've learned a lot, and especially from writing the book and talking to some of the therapists we interviewed, there are just certain things you can't do anymore. You ask your kids in advance most of the time, may I give you some advice, or do you mind if I, weigh in, that kind of thing. Because if you don't do that and you give your opinion, they immediately shut down and say, okay, I got to go, I'm busy.
Well, and I had to learn not to write long emails to one daughter who would never read it. So.
Right. Yeah. Or the kids don't like to talk on the phone. That's another thing. They like to.
Except I have one daughter who does.
Isn't that funny, Mike? Neither one of mine like to talk on the phone. So yeah, phone. I don't know what that is. It's an interesting thing. But I do have a question for you about,
sure,
when you're making these transitions, because that's a huge transition to lose a spouse to divorce versus losing a spouse to cancer. I mean, they're both huge losses, and they impact your identity, your role, like where do you fit in once something like that happens. And I'm just would love to tap into that a little bit, if that rebooting is because of a loss of a partner. What was it that you ladies did? What helped you navigate that loss? Because they're two very different kinds of losses. One is a choice. One is just, nature taking its course in a negative way. So let's talk a little bit about when you lose your partner. And
well,
so,
I'll go first, since I went
different.
first. I became single first.
Mm-hmm.
Mine wasn't a choice. I didn't choose to get divorced. My former husband chose it, and it was heartbreaking. I didn't have a clue. So many people said to me, you must have known. And I said, I had no idea. And I thought we were happy. I was happy. Then I found out we weren't happy. Surprise. So it was devastating to me because I'd moved several times because of his career. And I fortunately had my career, and that was a big saving grace because I could jump into that with more gusto, and wasn't reinventing myself, but it was taking stock of my sort of temperature and how I felt. I had my core friends and the profession, as I said, and I had time to pursue some interest. For example, I went to a dancing class, Lindy and Foxtrot and all that, which he wouldn't have done. So I could do that. I could be with some people whom he didn't really like, be with them more. And because I had met him so young, both of us met our spouses at 22, I decided, and because I had, my whole status is challenged, I decided I was going to date to show that somebody else wanted me, even if he didn't. I jumped into that too quickly. I would advise other people who were divorced, maybe widowed, to take their time, spend this Saturday night alone by themselves, find things to be alone. But I didn't do that. I mean, sometimes I did. Mostly
a lot of this is documented in our book we wrote prior to this one, Suddenly Single After 50.
Right. So you go ahead, Meg, and tell.
Well, divorce is very different.
Let me just say, I hated when some people said, oh, death is so much worse than divorce. It doesn't matter. Who cares which is worse? They're both traumatic.
Definitely.
So what I hear you saying, Barbara, is maybe people could take the advice of keep those platitudes and things to yourself and just say, I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Margaret, what was your experience?
Well, there is a difference between losing a spouse to death and divorce. You can become, in a small town like St. Louis, which is where Barbara lived at the time, persona non grata. People will be nice about it. They're nosy, they're gossipy, they're talking about you. Oh my God. Blah, blah, blah. When I was one of the first in my age group amongst the peers I had at the time to lose a spouse, and people really came through. Some didn't, and that's a shock in itself. But, I was wined and dined in people for at least a year. And it is a different situation. It's very different. I didn't think people were gossiping. I hadn't dated much before I married my husband. So I was sure I wasn't going to date, period. That was not in my wheelhouse and really did not appeal to me. However, I was in an Apple store one day and ran into an old high school boyfriend. And then we started going out for 3.5 years.
Wow.
So that was my dating experience. I did go online, but that was a disaster. I had funny experience. I mean, I could turn it into a very funny experience.
You should write a play about that. You guys, that would be great. Just like,
well, Barbara had 365 dates or something.
Wow. I honestly have to say that my mantra is, if something happens to my husband, I'm going to get a hobby, because I love my husband and I don't want to relearn someone else. That's just because I have the luxury of thinking that because I'm still married, you know what I mean? But in my mind, I think it takes courage after you lose a partner to jump back in and, I think, be vulnerable and put yourself back out there for, someone you don't know and having to go through that whole process again. And I think that's a courageous thing to do.
Well, I joke with Barbara, if I could meet someone and pretend that I've known them for 5 years and start at that point, it would be great. I don't want to have to go through all that auditioning and, flirting and trying to look terrific and every second. I'm just not into that. If the right one came along, maybe, but it's really not something I'm pursuing at the moment. I'm trying to have a new life here in New York City. I want to do what I want to do. It's the first time in my life I have really, really been on my own.
And I think that's an interesting perspective. You said it's the first time in your life you can do what you really want to do. And we've grown so much, right? As life has gone on and the experiences we've had, we're very different people in a lot of ways at our age rather than 15, 20, 22, 25, right? Hopefully we've grown. And I think the things we might have chosen even at 35 are different at 45, can be different at 55. And I think that's probably part of the journey if I were to guess, because again, I'm not in your situation. But when you lose that part of your identity, because let's be honest, that's what a partner is, right?
Sure. It's an appendage.
It is.
I mean, when you were married 31 years, I was married 42. It is. It's like losing an appendage.
Yeah, because it is part of your rhythm. It's part of your day. But, it's one of those things where who are you? Right. I would think that would be.
That was my first question. What am I supposed to do now? I kind of was like a deer in the headlights. What do I do now? And then I figured it out. And it helped to have Barbara, counseling me along the way.
And I remember saying to Meg when she moved to New York City, it doesn't have to be permanent. If you don't like it, it'll be a pain in the neck, but if you don't like it, you'll pack up and go somewhere else again. And I think that's one thing we've learned, that sadly, in a way, nothing is permanent. But then on the good news, it doesn't have to be.
Well, that's part of the flexibility.
Yes.
Not only, that Gina was alluding to earlier. I think we're both pretty flexible people, actually, in our heads. That's one of my good qualities. I'm not as patient as Barbara, but
isn't that kind of a key quality to the second half of life and losing a partner and moving? I mean, it takes flexibility to continue to stay in the game in an active way that's, so you don't quit.
Well, we also know how to, it goes back to the reporter researcher. We know how to meet people, make friends, try things. We know how to find Meg knows how to find a good tutoring program for her tutoring. Before I even moved to my little village, I lined up contacts for some of the things I like to do. I found a Pilates studio. I found a painting class, which is another interest. So we know how to find resources. We know how to try something out. And if we don't like it, I went to a yoga class a few times originally, and I was so bored. I kept poking the person I came with, like, what time is it? What time is it? Is it over yet?
It's too slow.
So we know that nothing has to be forever.
I love that shift. That it sounds like, if I were to put a word to it, it's more of a curiosity. It's instead of being committed from the beginning that this has to be X, Y, and Z, our expectation is it has to be this, just being curious, like, would I like it? Do I like it? And it's okay if you don't. That's what I'm hearing.
Part of aging is freeing too, believe it or not. I mean, we used to have very limited time. We were on a, treadmill, got to meet this deadline, going to work from 9 to whatever time. This is the most leisure time or free time, however you want to phrase it, I've ever had. And there's nobody telling us what to do. I mean, I don't have to get up at 6 a.m. I do anyway, but if I want to eat chocolate cake at 4 before dinner, I do it. It's very freeing in many, many ways. And dating also at this age is very freeing. It's so different. Barbara, you can talk about that better than me. Dating at this age.
Well, my attitude was, it's one meal, one glass of wine, one lunch, dinner, whatever. And if you don't like the person, you won't take another invitation. And if he doesn't like you, he's not going to call you. And it's not like, oh my God, he didn't call me, I'm just so heartbroken. It was, okay, so what?
But there are teenager-ish moments.
Yeah, there are of course there are, there was like, how come he didn't call me?
Right.
But I still have my mother's voice in my head a lot of the times. And now at this age, I'm trying to get rid of that. Sorry, Mom, but I'm not going to do that your way. So that takes a while to get rid of.
It does. Yeah.
Well, we've lived in paradigms all of our lives, right? Each season has its paradigm, and now you're in a new paradigm. So I would imagine the question would be, does this particular paradigm or activity serve me anymore?
Right. But now we have our kids.
Yeah.
But now we also have our kids' voices in our head. The other day when I was driving somewhere, I told Meg this, and my younger daughter called me on the phone. It's like, where are you going, Mom? Because you're supposed to be a prisoner in your house during this new variant. I mean, she didn't come out and say it that way, but that was how she was so shocked that I was off somewhere.
Yeah. Now they're telling us what to do. Oh my gosh. Which is cute in a way. I mean, at least they care about us. At least we talk to them. We know so many people who don't talk to their kids.
Right.
It feels like there's a lot of releasing that takes place. We're releasing our at least for me, thinking about releasing expectations, releasing the need for approval, or releasing the need for a partner, or, for some people, it's like, wait a minute. Do I actually, I might have thought I had to have this or I would die, right? Or this is the thing that has to be. And it just seems like part of aging is beginning to step back and maybe have a more open assessment of every area of our lives. For some people, it just seems like that would be a way to navigate. It has been for me, since my life has been through so much in the last 5 years. It's like, kind of makes your head spin, and you have, every time something comes up and you have to deal with it, every time you have to reassess, right? Like, okay, that might have been what I was thinking 5 years ago, but life has changed.
Absolutely. Well, we were in routines. We worked hard. We raised our kids, reared our kids. And now really it's a time where we can pay ourselves back and maybe put ourselves first for once, which is very hard for both of us. I've never put anybody before myself. And this has been a whole new ball game. I have a new playbook, and I'm sort of winging it on a daily basis. It has definitely improved my relationships with my 3 children. Not that they weren't fine before, but they're stronger than ever. I'd say the same with you, Barbara, too.
Yes.
You handle your kids so well, I think, your daughters.
Especially because I felt terrible that I wasn't raised in a divorced household, and I felt terrible that they had divorced parents.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit of a burden to feel like you had failed.
I've never heard you say that before.
Oh, okay, good. I remember going.
This is new.
Yeah, I went to my younger daughter's parents' weekend in college, and there were, I think, 5 girls who wanted the families to get together for one of those group dinners, let's the parents become automatically best friends. And my mother had come with me. So I didn't feel as single as I was. And I remember feeling terrible. She was the only one with divorced parents in the group. So it's a stigma. I'm not over wearing the big D. Well, now I am. Otherwise, initially I felt I had a big D on my chest.
Okay, Hester.
Yeah.
Right.
But, I think we weigh different things. I mean, Meg and I are both Jewish and belong to the same temple. And an announcement came through the other day. If you hadn't had a bat mitzvah, if you wanted to go for an adult bat mitzvah. Now, I didn't have a bat mitzvah, even though I went to Hebrew school 3 times a week. So I did momentarily think, gee, do you want to do this? It would be a real commitment of time. So for, one night I thought, well, maybe I'll do it.
No,
and then,
don't. I'll have to throw you
by the
party,
morning. But by the morning I was over that. So
yeah, because that's a whole commitment to learning and reciting, and isn't it kind of like,
yes,
it's a program. You don't just have it. You've got to.
How are you going to learn Hebrew, Barbara? Come on. I mean,
no, I'm not doing
remember
it.
my phone number.
No, I'm not doing it.
Hebrew is such a beautiful language. I love to listen to it, but what I'm hearing through our conversation is there's just layers, aren't there?
Yes.
And every layer comes with the question, is this what I want? Does this make sense anymore? And maybe that's a fair question, because maybe it did make sense at some point.
Well, I think we approached this. What are the 6 things that we talked about as we age? The 6 biggest concerns, will we have friends and intimacy, and where will we live?
Will we have enough money? Because I saw that with my mother. Aging is very expensive. Bringing in help into your home, if you're going to age at home, is terribly expensive. And if you don't have long-term care insurance and, buying groceries and there are a lot of things that aren't covered by Medicare insurance. I mean, hearing aids aren't covered yet. My mother had macular degeneration. There were certain eye treatments that weren't covered.
So again, these different layers of life, it's a push-pull, isn't it? You might be single, but you still have other people that fit into that puzzle from time to time.
Very, very much so. I have 3 grandsons that I think about.
I'm not there and may never be there. And that's a grieving thing too. You know what I'm saying? Like, really, we have ideas about what life will be, don't we?
That I try not to do. Because I have artsy fartsy kids, and I never look at them and think they're going to do what everybody else does, because they don't. Nobody's married. I have no grandchildren. One was in a relationship. One has been in a relationship for 8 years. Tommy, when are you going to get married? Well, why would I get married? I don't want children. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anything goes right now in this world. And Barbara and I have really tried to stay with it in terms of, in fact, in writing the book, we included different genders. We have men in the book as well as women, sexuality. We have homosexual couples, men and women we interviewed. We talked to a trans person who, sort of schooled us in what that's all about and all the new terms, because we're so clueless about this stuff. And that helps in our conversation with our kids, and in Barbara's case, her grandkids. Not that she's talking about some of this stuff, but yeah.
Right.
So if we were to kind of bring this to a close, what kind of, in both of your minds, because I would like to hear this from both of you, what are 3 things you would want someone to think about as they're going through these processes? And it can be in relationship to anything we've talked about, but what 3 anchor points? Let's start with you, Barbara. What 3 anchor points would you like to share with the listeners? Things that you really want them to think about? Or
I think people should think about crafting the life that they want, that not what they're supposed to do because of how they were raised or maybe how their marriage was, or if they're in a so think about what you really want. And as Oprah has said in some of her articles, then throw it out to the universe and go for it. Figure out how to reach it. So that's one thing. I think about what's really important to your value system, which Meg and I believe in volunteer work. We're interested in making the world a better place. And how are we going to do that? It's not all about us. And stay flexible. I hate the word pivot because it was so overused during the pandemic, but I think it does describe in a good way, because you can visualize, if this doesn't work for you, how are you going to pivot? And if where you live, for example, doesn't work, then how are you going to pivot, go elsewhere?
Mm-hmm. Good ones. How about you, Meg?
Okay, I think 3 things that are very important. Number 1 on my list is get outside yourself. It's, as Barbara said, it's not all about me. And boy, does it make you feel good, and it actually changes your brain chemistry. I really enjoy working with kids, and it's, as I write in the book, we write in the book, it's the sweet spot in my life, my tutoring and working with kids. I've done a lot of stuff with kids, more than just tutoring. I think you have to have purpose. If you retire from your job, you need something to retire to. Figure out what your passions are. There are so many ways of doing that. We go into detail in the book, how to find a passion, what passions can be, from tracing your roots to, perfecting a recipe. And try to be optimistic. These are tough times. We live in a world that at times feels out of control, which we just wrote a blog about. not everything's doom and gloom. Look under your nose and say, oh, I'm really grateful for a lot of things. I have 3 healthy kids. I have a roof over my head, because in New York City, there's a lot of sadness and a lot of people on the streets who don't have a roof over their head or food to eat. There are a lot of starving kids. The kids I tutor are underserved and way behind in school. We have a lot of burdens in our society, and we have the time now to do something about it. And we can't change the world, but we can do it one step at a time. That's what I think.
That's good. I think that's great. And I think both of us try to say, I love you more to people.
Yes, I never was able to say I love you until probably once my kids were born. My mother and I had a rocky relationship, and it was really hard for me. Now I say it to my girlfriends. I say it to my sisters, which I never used to. We're very different. Yeah. I feel very free and more content than I probably have felt most of my life.
I hear that a lot, actually.
Yeah. And in some weird way, as awful as losing my husband was, it's a gift. It forced me to grow up and become an adult and learn how to plunge a toilet and put a shelf together and a chair together. And
Meg knows how to watch YouTubes and follow through on them.
I do.
Yeah, I'm very impressed.
I do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Barbara and Meg, it has been such a pleasure to spend time with you ladies today and have just a coffee chat about what life looks like after a certain age and what it looks like to navigate those things. Because the beauty of having 2 people is you get to hear 2 ways that these things are done. And I loved your candor, your honesty, the way you both were just so honest and authentic. And I think that brings such richness to the conversation. And I'm just really grateful that we had this time together today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And good luck to you.
Yes. And thank you for having us.
Call us if you have questions as you get older.
Yeah. And send us a link or whatever once it appears or is on, whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. Friends, today I've been speaking with Barbara-Ballinger and Margaret-Crane. They're writers and authors of Not Dead Yet, Rebooting Your Life After 50, and Suddenly Single After 50. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 256, you will find links to Barbara and Meg, their website, lifelessonsat50plus.com. And while you're there, please join my email list. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Friends, this is an ongoing conversation. This is an ongoing mindset. Let us work on our flexibility, our mental, our emotional, and our physical flexibility as we age. It is a gift, and we can choose to open it every single day, regardless of the difficulties that come along. Let's shift the mindset toward aging, toward the benefits and the gifts and the opportunities that come into our lives in this season that weren't there before. And let's tap into those things and make the world a better place. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I like what you said.
I like that very much.
Yeah. Can we borrow that?
And stay married.
Yeah. Enjoy your husband.
Yes.
Be glad you have him.
Oh, that's a really good point. Actually.
Yes.
How long have you been married?
I have been married 31 years.
Okay.
So this year will be 32.
Congratulations.
Well, that's great. How many kids? Do you have kids?
I have 2 girls. Yes.
Okay.
I do. They are 30 and 28. So they're grown women.
Good
living
for
their
you.
best lives. Thank you so much.
All right. It was great meeting you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Have a great day, ladies.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. So that was a fun conversation. And if you want to hear more of these kinds of conversations and great resources to people who are hitting midlife and beyond, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this podcast. I will be bringing more inspiration and inspirational people to you in the weeks to come. Thank you so much for being with me today, friends. Take care. Bye-bye.